Okay, welcome to Are We Really Under Cyber Attack? My name is Ira Wilsker. I am a college professor. Been teaching college now for 38 years, finishing up my 38th year next week. I am a deputy sheriff in Jefferson County, Texas. I work in the training division, plus I also do the computer crime investigations, predominantly things like child pornography and pedophiles. And I have been doing cybersecurity presentations for many years, including at several APCUG events in Las Vegas, Chicago, New York, and Atlanta. And I'm going to start with a premise. That premise is that we are under an active cyber attack and have been for several years. We are under financial attack. We are under criminal attack. There are political implications, military implications, and that our personal, financial, physical, military, and national security are all at risk due to these continuing cyber attacks. About 4 weeks ago, you may have seen on the network news, Russian hackers have been in the White House system for months, widely reported in the media. According, as you can see from ABC News, Russian hackers had access to the General Counsel's office in the White House. They had access to non-public information. They had access to the president's schedule. Now, if you can't see some national security and political security information and risks here, I'd have to question that. Go back a little over a year ago, year and a half ago, we had the massive breach at Target, where anywhere between 40 and 110 million credit card numbers and related information were taken. Go back to the Home Depot attack, the Sony attack. We are seeing a massive amount of criminal, financial crime taking place over the internet. The FBI, a little over a year ago, sent out an unclassified warning to retail businesses. This, notice it's marked unclassified, the U over there, and it's talking about the recent cyber intrusion events directed towards retail firms. And as you can see down here in the bottom paragraph, the primary point of attack have been the point of sale systems. That's where we swipe our debit or credit cards. As you probably know, there was malware on the point of sale system, those little red boxes at Target you swipe your own credit card with, that was effectively stealing our credit card information. A minimum of 40 million credit cards, complete with a magnetic stripe and security codes, were taken. Some reports put it as high as 110 million credit card and debit card transactions were stolen. And here on the second page of this FBI warning that went to the retailers a little over a year ago, it mentions how there are several variations of the malware designed to penetrate these point-of-sale systems. They vary in type. They are designed to locate and extract specific financial data. Mentions that there are 2 tracks of data on your credit card that they want to steal. Track 1 contains your name and your account number. Track 2 contains your credit card data, your credit card numbers, and expiration dates. Every time you swipe a credit card at a point-of-sale terminal, I filled my tank yesterday. Excuse me, I did pay at the pump. And sure, it read all my data. Every time you swipe your card, this data is retrieved and transmitted. And the point-of-sale information, the point-of-sale terminal, has to send this information somewhere. And if there is malware in the system, it captures instantly the exact same data that's going through their payment system. The current round of malware that is attacking our point-of-sale system is explicitly designed to penetrate the point of sale system. Not just that, the data is stolen before the internal networks can encrypt it. So it's the totally raw data coming right out of that point of sale terminal that is being hijacked. It is not the data after it's encrypted. And here are, as of a year ago, the 3 primary types of malware that are hitting the retail businesses. All of these appear to be coming from Russia. First, we had the Dexter. This is what hit a lot of the machines back in October, November of 2013. Then we had a Trojan, point of sale RAM, monitored the information in payment application programs. Once it finds an unencrypted data track in memory, that information is immediately stolen, compiled, and transmitted most of the time back to Russia. Then we have the V-skimmer, replaced Dexter, also targets Windows-based machines. If a V-skimmer infected machine is not connected to the internet, the program will wait until a USB drive with a specific volume name is inserted, and then it'll download all of that information into the USB drive. There's also Aleena Malware, another type of point-of-sale malware that allows the malware to actually be updated remotely. Basically, it comes into the system that has already been compromised. As you saw, one of the vectors in penetrating Target a year and a half ago was an air conditioning contractor that had access to electronic billing and electronic payments that submitted their invoices directly to Target. And that was the vector. Their machines were compromised. When they logged into Target, Target's machine was compromised. That was purposely targeted. The air conditioning contractor probably got it from a phishing email. Most of you are familiar with phishing, very common form of identity theft, or a very common form or method of loading malware onto a carefully targeted computer. They're widely available. You can buy the entire systems for about $6,000 from these Russian websites, and you can steal 100 million credit cards yourself. This is towards the end of the FBI report. It says that there's variations. It says the high dollar value gained from some of these compromises are basically encouraging the cyber thieves to develop highly sophisticated methodologies. When we do things like investigating machines, part of the problem is the more sophisticated malware makes itself very hard to detect. The better written programs are almost impossible to detect, which makes us in the security industry kind of concerned. There's a lot of stuff out there that despite our best efforts, we simply don't know about it. And it says down here on the bottom that because this is a financially motivated cybercrime, there's a lot of people involved. The FBI stated that point-of-sale malware crime is going to grow over the near term, despite what we're trying to do to mitigate it. And I always enjoy the administrative note in the bottom that we're not supposed to show this to you. Here's what happens with that stolen credit card data, such as what was taken from Target, Home Depot, Michael's, and several other places. There are a variety of companies, including a few that were here in New Jersey and North Carolina, many overseas, especially in China, that make excellent quality counterfeit credit cards. Here are some of the credit cards that were stolen in Target. This is not the credit card, this is the data. Sorry the print is small. I tried to get the information on there, but just below the center, you can see MasterCard debit card, standard card, expired 11/14. Realize this was stolen in November of 2013. It was stolen from a Target in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was a Chemical Bank MasterCard. You could buy all of the data from that MasterCard debit card for $26.80. Below it is a Visa signature credit card. Little higher credit limit. Expires this month, May of 2015. That'll cost you $39.20. And that is the type of information that is being sold. This website that I did the screen capture from is in Russia. They're constantly posting newly stolen credit card information, and they actually guarantee that when you download the credit card information from them, they guarantee the data that you are downloading is good. The credit card has not been stopped and voided, and if it is, they'll give you another one for free. Here is another one of those sites. They had 81,000 sets of credit card and debit card numbers, along with their expiration dates and their security codes. For a nominal fee, they will also show you the result of their data mining. And in addition to the credit card information, you can get from the holder the social security number, mother's maiden name, and date of birth for many of those cards, which means you now have that other person's identity. For all practical financial purposes, you are now them, and you can access anything. Realize social security number, mother's maiden name, date of birth. Look at how many existing facilities you can penetrate or even register your own credit cards at various retailers. And by the way, this site does not accept credit cards and payment. They accept bitcoins and web money and the like. Here is one of the sites. This one was in North Carolina that sells excellent quality. These are really good quality counterfeit credit cards. When you place your order, you're agreeing that you're buying these credit cards, these blank credit cards. It says, for novelty use only. That's what they said until the FBI raided them a couple of months ago. But here, just the first three on the page. You see a Capital One Visa card. There's no hassle card. You see a Capital One Dolphin card. Very bottom edge, you see a Citibank card. And notice the blank cards are $12. For an extra $15, they will code the card, emboss it, program the magnetic stripe with whatever data you give them. And of course, you're acknowledging this is for novelty use only. They also sold excellent quality counterfeit driver's licenses, counterfeit social security cards, and they sold things like green cards for the undocumented or illegal immigrants, all kinds of stuff for novelty purposes only. If you notice that they accept Bitcoin in payment, this site has been shut down. Here is some more details of the blank plastic cards. They are complete with holograms that many of them have, and the physical quality of these counterfeit cards is excellent. And there were dozens and dozens. I happen to have an American Airlines Advantage City card because I fly American Airlines quite a bit, and through some backdoor means, I got one of these American Airlines blank city cards up there, put it next to my legitimate one, and you couldn't tell the difference. If I would have paid the few dollars more, I could have had my numbers encoded on the front, embossed on the front, my magnetic stripe encoded on the back, and I could have had a duplicate credit card. Of course, now they would have also had all my information, You know, there's no honor among thieves. If I gave them the information to emboss on a credit card, how do I know they wouldn't sell my information to somebody else? But if you notice, those are very good quality counterfeits. So what happens? From McAllen, Texas, down here in South Texas, on the Mexican border, police in South Texas say that information stolen during the Target security breach is being divided up and sold off regionally. There were 2 Mexican cities that walked across the bridge. I've been in McAllen many times. You literally walk across a small bridge to get to Mexico. And they had with them 96 of these excellent quality counterfeit credit cards, all of which were encoded with the information stolen from Target. And what they were doing is they were going to local retail stores in McAllen, including Target's. They were buying merchandise with the counterfeit credit cards. They all went through. They all were cleared as paid. Then they would take it back across the Mexican border, sell it, and then come back and buy more. So in the time that they did that, they bought tens of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise from national retailers in South Texas, all paid for with these counterfeit credit cards that were excellent quality. Here's a picture of another one. St. Theresa, New Mexico. This one came from the Border Patrol. They found a group of Mexicans coming across the border that had 422 counterfeit cards. 411 were bundled, and then they had 11 on their person. These cards, excellent quality counterfeit, all embossed, all with the coded magnetic stripes, were to be sold in the United States, predominantly in the Hispanic communities, so they could have Christmas every day. Just imagine how much financial damage could have been done to the financial industry if these 422 counterfeit credit cards were widely used. Most of your credit card companies, MasterCard, Visa, Discover, have a 100% no fraud guarantee. They're going to eat that loss, but understand that becomes part of their operating expense and passed off to us honest people as extra charges, finance charges, and fees. Take a look at what happened a year ago at our major newspapers. You're going to see the Washington Post. Chinese hackers broke into the Washington Post. They wanted to know who the sources are in China who are talking to the media. When the Chinese broke into the Washington Post, they went in to the reporters' private notebooks that they keep online. They were trying to find who in China was leaking information to the media. Wall Street Journal got hit about the same time. They said they were hit by Chinese hackers. You're going to see what they were looking for in just a second. But down here in the bottom, the caption of the picture, it says that media organizations are being hit in an effort to spy on journalists covering China. Here's the second part of that story, that the hackers, and we've already documented this, we've researched this, they're coming from one massive building, high-rise building, that has some of the broadest broadband internet connections in the world, which is run by the Chinese military. They're the ones that broke in to the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post computers. And the Chinese spying on U.S. media is a very common, they're calling it here, phenomena. New York Times, Friday, February 1st. New York Times got hacked. And it says here that not just the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post. This is all part of a far larger global campaign attacking news organizations worldwide. And if you look at the bottom paragraph here, I didn't underline it in red, but look at the bottom paragraph. It says here, the Chinese attempted to remove note files and other information related to its reporting on the fortunes amassed by relatives of China's premier, Xi Jinping, and basically, they said that more and more are getting hacked. There had been a year ago articles in the major media documenting heavy financial corruption among the leadership in China, and the Chinese were trying to find out who was leaking that information. China targets U.S. with cyber espionage. There is something called the NIE, or the National Intelligence Estimate. This is a classified document produced for internal federal use. This goes to the president and basically the top administrative officials. And of course, like a lot of other things in the federal government, it leaks. Anyway, it says here that economic intelligence has been conducted by Russia, Israel, and France against the United States, but their efforts were minor compared to the attacks emanating from China. And of course, what did we do? We sent protests to the Chinese embassy. It says China, look in the second paragraph, China is aggressively attempting to infiltrate the computers of American companies and government agencies as a way to gain economic leverage. In the United States, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars on research and development, our private companies. You're going to see that number crop up in another couple slides. The Chinese are aggressively stealing multiple terabytes of data on our research and development. There are excellent quality but counterfeit pharmaceuticals, prescription drugs, under the patents in the United States and the rest of the world that are being produced in China, and they're sold to third world countries at deeply discounted prices, shutting off American, European, and Israeli companies from selling in those countries. They're even down to having the holograms and the seals on the package. You're going to see in a minute how that's also affecting our national security. They also attacked, and keep this thought in mind, what I highlighted in red on the bottom. They also broke in to the network security company RSA and the defense contractor Lockheed Martin, as well as the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. Now, RSA, many of us know, are one of the major sources of commercial secure encryption. The Chinese stole the keys. So a lot of items, major defense contractors that encrypt their data, which they thought was very secure, with RSA products, had their data stolen. Richard Clarke. Some of you may remember, even before 9/11, Richard Clarke had been a national security advisor for Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush. He did not work for Barack Obama. But Richard Clarke put out a warning on about 9/11, about 6 months before the attacks. And of course, nobody took him seriously. He has been a cybersecurity advisor and national security advisor, as you see, for about a half a dozen presidents. He has an excellent reputation. This was published, you see, just about 3 years ago in the Smithsonian Magazine. And if you look at the two-line summary at the top, Richard Clarke warned at a presentation at the Smithsonian in Washington that major companies are being regularly infiltrated by the Chinese to steal research and development. Look at what's underlined on the bottom of the slide. Richard Clarke says that state-sanctioned Chinese hackers are stealing research and development from U.S. company, threatening the long-term competitiveness of America. They are stealing our technology, producing identical or competitive products without having to bear the cost of research and development because they are outright stealing our technology. Medical technology, military technology, industrial technology. They are taking market share from American companies by dramatically underpricing, price competing with the American companies on the world market. The American companies, like think about your prescription prices, your name brand prescriptions. They've got to figure in the cost of research and development in the wholesale price of those expensive prescription drugs that most of us take. The Chinese, by stealing the information, they can produce the same prescription drugs. Forget about patent law. They don't care about that. They can produce the same prescription drugs, but do not have to allocate research and development expenses to the price of those prescription drugs. Therefore, they can sell it, violating U.S. and world patent law, they can sell it often in third world markets and even some European and other countries for less than what the American companies are selling it for, far less. Richard Clarke says, look at the top over here, end of the second line, every major company in the United States has been penetrated by these Chinese hackers. Every major company, the Chinese are in their computers. It says down there in the fifth line, we're losing our competitiveness by having all of our research and development stolen by the Chinese. Then on the bottom, it just tells about how Clarke gave 10 weeks advance notice of the attack on 9/11. Think about it. We spend the money on research and development. The Chinese steal the research and development. Imagine how much cheaper they can produce goods not having to pay for the research and development they stole from us. This was part of his interview. He said, quote, every major company in the United States has already been penetrated by China. My greatest fear is that rather than having a cyber Pearl Harbor, we will instead have this death of 1,000 cuts where we lose our competitiveness by having all of our research and development stolen by the Chinese. If we lose our economic competitiveness, think about what happens to our economy, what happens to our personal income, what happens to our standard of living if the Chinese outcompete us because we pay for the research and development and they steal it. Here is an example. This was reported a long time ago and nobody believed it. 6 years ago, the Wall Street Journal broke a story that said that computer spies breached the U.S. $300 billion Joint Strike Fighter project. Look at the timestamp on the top left corner. This was 6 years ago. People poo-pooed it, said, oh no, because after all, the Joint Strike Fighter project from Lockheed Martin had encrypted data encrypted by RSA, one of the finest encryption utilities in the world. Back about 4 or 5 slides, you saw the Chinese penetrated RSA. Okay? And then it says that they have stolen the information on the $300 billion Joint Strike Fighter project. Middle of the paragraph, middle of the page, it says, similar incidents have also breached the Air Force's air traffic control system. And next line, The Chinese stole terabytes of data on the design and electronic systems, making it easier to defend against these state-of-the-art American airplanes. Understand, this was reported 6 years ago, and people said, nope, nothing like that would ever happen. Impossible. It's just a bunch of hype. Look down at what's underlined on the very bottom of this slide. It says here that our U.S. electrical distribution system, as well as our other critical infrastructure, have also been penetrated. Keep that in mind. That's going to crop up again. Well, remember the guy by the name of Edward Snowden? He is either seen as one of the biggest traitors in American history, or he is seen by another group of people as one of the greatest heroes in American history, because he was the NSA, the National Security Administration contractor, who stole massive amounts of data, went to Russia, and has proceeded to have it published all over the world. The previous slide was dated 2009, where it said that the Chinese had stolen our fighter plane data, and it was poo-pooed, and everybody said, nah, didn't happen, couldn't happen. Well, notice the date here, January 20th of this year. This was the Daily News. Chinese hackers stole F-35 fighter jet blueprints in Pentagon hack. Edward Snowden documents claim. Documents allege that the data that the Chinese used to produce its own J-31 fighter, which, according to analysts, you'll see coming up in another slide, is almost a nuts and bolts duplicate of the U.S. F-35 stealth fighter. Of course, the Chinese vehemently deny stealing any of our data. So it's your choice. I know in the intelligence community where I work, they think Edward Snowden is a traitor and needs to be tried for treason. Other people are calling him a hero. He said Chinese on the top. Realize he just said this earlier this year, 6 years after that Wall Street Journal article that people wouldn't believe. Chinese hackers stole many terabytes of data about the American F-35 stealth fighter jet. New documents provided by NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden contend. The stolen data, and I'm going to actually show you the data he stole in a minute, the stolen materials taken from the Pentagon and contractor Lockheed Martin included the radar designs and the engine schematics used in the crown jewel of American military aircraft. Now, look at that first part, the radar. It's a stealth plane. If you know how its radar is working, you can detect it, and you can defeat it, and you can evade it. The reason why the engine schematics are important is a lot of anti-aircraft tracking and destruction devices, like a lot of the surface-to-air and air-to-air missiles, home in on infrared. The engines are designed to pretty much dissipate as much heat as possible to give off the smallest possible infrared signature. If the Chinese know how those engines work, then they can develop the technology to track our latest stealth fighter. In the center it says the Pentagon had previously admitted hackers were able to breach government networks, but of course they're not going to point at China. The Chinese version of the stealth fighter, the J-21, wait till you see it, looks just like the U.S. F-35 and also the Lightning II fighter. The United States is two of the United States' newest, highest tech, most expensive fighter planes ever produced. On the bottom, of course, the Chinese vehemently deny the hack, and they deny Edward Snowden's claims. This came out January 27th. New documents reveal the Chinese behind the F-35 act. Experts have long argued China has copied the design for its own fighter jets. And what it is, they analyzed the data that Snowden released and compared it to what we've been able to find out about this Chinese plane. And lo and behold, it says that this F35 Lightning II, we spent $300 billion of your and my taxpayer money doing research and development, all went to China. And here they say the data breach took place in 2007, and now they're saying classified F-35 information is protected and remains secure. That's what the U.S. government officially said, that the information is protected and secured and wasn't all stolen in 2007 like Snowden said. Snowden outlined the scope of the F-35 efforts. We already talked about the radar, the engine schematics to cool it, the trailing and leading edges of the wings. Remember, this plane was designed to be a stealth plane, almost invisible to radar. The document claims that terabytes of data were stolen. Chinese hackers have also obtained data, look in the center, on the B-2 stealth bomber, the F-22 jet, space-based lasers, missile navigation and training, as well as the anti-aircraft missiles that our nuclear submarines have. Then it goes on, Snowden said that in this PowerPoint, which you're going to see in a second, I'm going to put it up here, the PowerPoint is marked classified. It is marked top secret. He released this lengthy Pentagon PowerPoint to Der Spiegel, the largest circulation newspaper in Germany. He gave it to the London Daily Mail, the entire PowerPoint, and several other news sources simultaneously. He proverbially opened up Pandora's box. If you do a search for that PowerPoint, there are thousands of copies of this top secret, highly classified PowerPoint online. And in this top secret Pentagon PowerPoint, which you're going to see in just a few seconds, he documented 30,000 hacks, 500 significant intrusions in the Department of Defense, 1,600 Department of Defense computers that were penetrated, and the data, the login data on 600,000 Department of Defense employees, military, civilian, and contractors were stolen, 300,000 user IDs and passwords, and even the personnel files of 33,000 U.S. Air Force. The amount of data stolen, he says on this project, was 50 terabytes of data. And of course, on the bottom, the Chinese government vehemently denies that they have stolen our data. Look carefully. This is the F-35 Lightning II. This is the most expensive fighter aircraft in the world. We spent $300 billion developing it. About a dozen countries, including England, Italy, Canada, Israel, and others, have already entered into contracts to purchase this F-35 Lightning II. It is just now entering U.S. military service. It is supposed to be the most advanced fighter in the world. Look at it carefully and tell me if you see it again. Because here's the Chinese J-20 and J-21. The Chinese built this jet in record time. They didn't have to spend several years on research and development. They stole ours. It was specifically designed to defeat the U.S. F-22 and F-35 jets, according to U.S. Navy intelligence analysts. I happen to work with someone who just recently retired from the Navy. She's a lieutenant commander intelligence officer for the Navy, and I did this presentation at a local church recently, and she was livid that I showed this to a church group that I did the presentation for 2 weeks ago, because she kind of knows something about this. She wouldn't say anything, but she was angry that I had this up there. If you will notice, this Chinese fighter is almost nuts and bolts identical. According to Navy intelligence, one of the things the Chinese did was they modified the avionics, the radar, and some of the electronics to be able to detect the F-22 and F-35 stealth fighters. The reason why they're able to modify our systems was because they knew all the technical specifications, not just of our avionics, but also they were able to calculate the weaknesses in our other planes. Here they are side by side. Of course, one's a left and one's a right view, but I don't know about you, but they sure look a lot alike. China stole 50 terabytes of data. Look in the top right corner. Here's a question to ask yourself. What are the national security implications of this alleged, I call it alleged because the Chinese vehemently deny it, this alleged data theft? The Chinese now have fighter aircraft. They're not yet quite online. They're still in final development. But they're going to have fighter aircraft built at relatively low cost, because they didn't do much research and development on them, just what they stole, that are specifically designed to take out our top-of-the-line fighter aircraft. Here's some slides from the PowerPoint that Snowden pointed out here. Okay, you can take a look at some of these things here. Okay, take a look at some of this. Notice this says top secret on the top. It says top secret over here on the top. Intelligence. S means secret. Chinese exfiltrate sensitive military technology. They acquired the radar design. They acquired the detail engine schematics. Specifically, how do they cool the engine gases? What are the leading and trailing edge treatments so it doesn't have a radar or infrared cross-section? How do they dissipate the heat on the aft deck? They included all of the technical drawings, the testing information. Over here on the right center, they showed the method that they used to manufacture the skin. And up here on the top, over here, is the infrared signatures, all done in our research and development to help make it less detectable. That this is what the Chinese have. Here is the data that they had on the other attacks, and some of this is kind of frightening. Some of this is kind of frightening. I already told you this right here about the user accounts compromised, but look at this section right here. They have the air refueling schedules for our planes that the tankers that refuel flights in the air. They have our mobility systems. They have the information, the complete dossiers, HR files on 33,000 general and field grade officers. They got 300,000 user IDs and passwords of Navy personnel. They stole the Navy missile navigation and tracking systems. They got the Navy nuclear submarine anti-aircraft missile designs. They have information on our air traffic system, contractor research and development, and the data on the B-2, the F-22, the F-35, and space-based lasers. They've also penetrated our electricity grid. Think about it. How dependent are we on electricity? There is overwhelming evidence that the Chinese, the Russians, and now the Iranians have penetrated our electric grid. They've penetrated it. They've left behind software programs that can disrupt the system. They came from China, Russia, and other countries. The heavy intrusions over the past year and a half have been tracked back to Iran. Now imagine if someone can shut down our power grid. One method said through an electronic magnetic pulse, set off a nuclear blast high in the atmosphere. Now they don't have to do that. Now they can do it with a click of a mouse. And it says down here on the very bottom, it says that there's a lot of intrusions and they're growing. There were a lot last year. Wall Street Journal reported, cyber attackers can take control of our electric facilities, our nuclear power plants, and our financial networks. Look in the center right here. If we go to war with them, they're going to turn off our power grid. They're also going to shut off our water, sewage, and other infrastructure. And there was a classified discussion at a CIA meeting that a New Orleans-based power company, possibly Gulf States Utilities, now called Entergy, that a cyber attack had taken out power equipment in multiple regions of the country. Of course, the Russians and the Chinese deny this. We haven't heard any denials from the Iranians. Here's a video.
Catherine, so there's been a spike in these hacks.
That's correct, Shep. U.S. officials emphasizing to Fox that attacks on defense networks are on the rise, and significantly that this is more of an espionage rather than a terrorism issue. The number and the quantity of attacks or intrusions point to a sophisticated enemy, in this case China and Russia, though their embassies in Washington are denying that tonight. And while the electronic evidence trail points in that direction too, officials say it's impossible to conclude that the cyber spies are acting on behalf of those governments, Shep.
But they hacked more than one power grid, right?
That's correct. Also, U.S. officials believe there's evidence cyber spies penetrated the grid, adding that the water, sewage, and other infrastructure may also be vulnerable. The concern is that the intruders left behind software that would be used in the future to disrupt the system when the U.S. is already under attack. Experts tell us that the worst-case scenario would be a multi-layered attack, including a loss of power with a conventional threat like an explosion. The loss of power and communications would essentially cripple the government's ability to respond, Shep.
Oof. What's Homeland Security saying? Serious or overblown this thing?
Yeah. Well, the Homeland Security Secretary telling Fox today that she's not aware of any incidents where the grid was compromised, and she appeared to play down the threat by saying it's not a new problem.
What I can say is that the vulnerability has been something that the Department of Homeland Security and the energy sector have known about for years.
It's worth noting, though, that the Russians used a cyber attack as a weapon in last summer's confrontation with the Georgians. Before the invasions, the Russians apparently attacked the Georgian government websites, and that's what we would expect in these scenarios, Shep.
Catherine Herridge, thanks.
I see that John Mazur posted, quote, Ira is scaring me. Wait till we got 2 slides left, and then I'm going to say something back to you, John.
Calling for cyber jihad. Now, what that means is they're calling out to all of their sympathizers and people who support the al-Qaeda ideology around the world to put those computer skills to good use and to target big companies and to target government agencies. And the problem is intelligence officials are very worried because it's very difficult to guard against this. And still, right now, the U.S. doesn't have really effective legislation that's gone through that sort of says how the government is going to take a coordinated approach to sort of stopping this attack and how they're going to try to protect a lot of these facilities, actually, public facilities that are very vulnerable to something like this.
So is there anything that we can do to help protect ourselves against cyber terrorism? What can we do?
Well, there actually is something you can do, and a lot of us don't realize every day, you need to think about where you work and what kind of emails you get. One of the main things they tell people to do is never, ever click to open attachments, and it's something that's actually kind of simple, and it's a phishing technique that people can use to get into your systems. All they do is they do a little research on you. Like, Suzanne, if I went on Facebook right now, I could probably find out quite a few facts about you pretty quickly, enough to craft an email that looked like it was targeted just for you, so that you would think, wow, this is coming from someone I know. I'm going to go ahead and click and open this. And then this virus or worm has gotten into the system, and that's one of the ways that they can target.
So it sounds kind of benign when you think about it that way. What is the worst case scenario when you talk about a cyber attack?
Well, here's what has senators so worried and intelligence officials so worried. These people, especially when you're talking about people like Al-Qaeda, can target things like your air traffic control systems. Think about the electric grid going down in the middle of the summer or the middle of the winter when there's no heating or no cooling. Think about your water filtration facilities. Think about your nuclear plants. Now, those are targets that they are very worried about because if anything happens there, real people could die. So videos like this do cause a lot of concern. Now, this one the FBI actually obtained last year. Probably just pulled it off the internet because that's where Al-Qaeda is going to post these calls for jihad, but it's very disturbing.
It's one thing for them to say that they can do this or they want to do this. Are they actually, do we know if they're sophisticated enough, Al-Qaeda sophisticated enough to do this kind of thing?
Well, here's the scary thing. A 17-year-old kid is sophisticated enough, and we've seen intrusions happen like that. And the Department of Homeland Security has gotten like 50,000, more than 50,000 reports of intrusions in the last year. Now, you are talking about facilities that do have a heightened level of security around their computer systems already, but it's still not good enough. So when you take that into consideration, it's very alarming.
All right. So, Dan Kelly, thank you so much. Very informative. Really appreciate it.
Obviously, we could be shut down pretty quickly by a coordinated attack. And our next major cyber attack, our next major disaster will probably be a cyber attack. So, to John Mazur, where you said, I'm scaring you, what I usually close these presentations with is sleep well tonight. I want to thank you all for participating. I'm easy to find. A lot of you get my email address in your newsletters. I write a lot of the columns in your newsletters. So if there's any service I could do for you, please let me know. Thank you all for participating. I know my time's about up.